Love is in the air, fellas. Valentine's Day is right around the corner. But we have some good news for you. Thanks to our friends at Manscaped, the global leaders in men's below-the-waist grooming. We have the right tools for your family jewels, so you're ready for that special day. Over 2 million people worldwide are trusting Manscaped for their grooming needs. I'm one of them. Mero is one of them. I would highly recommend becoming one of them. Look, it's 2021. You can't be walking around with an 80s porn star bush on you. It's bad manners. It's bad manners. And I get it. You know, global pandemic, lockdown. Who are you trying to impress? Who are you trying to do these things for? Or who cares? Tinder is basically shut down. You can't be having casual acquaintances, shall we say. There's more to life than that, lads. If you're in a relationship, you gotta stay ready. And if you're not, then you're doing it for yourself. Why settle for anything less than great? Like, thanks to Manscaped, and thanks to the Perfect Package 3.0, you'll be perfect every time. It's led by the Lawnmower 3.0, which is their revolutionary trimmer with advanced skin-safe technology, and that features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce all those kind of grooming accidents you might have experienced in the past. No more nicks, no more scratches, no more tugs, just silky smooth, beautiful grooming. It makes a hell of a difference. This thing has a 90-minute battery. It's waterproof, so you can use it in the shower. You don't have to worry about cleaning the sink or cleaning the floor afterwards and all that kind of crack. It's just handy. It's so convenient, so easy, so smooth. All these products that feature in the Perfect Package 3.0, including Crop Preserver, including Crop Reviver. You get Manscaped boxers with their anti-chafing and they're super comfy. All of them are included. So look, if your loved one this year is scratching their head and wondering, what am I going to get them for Valentine's Day? The shops are all closed. You can't go out for a meal, nice romantic dinner like you would. You're probably going to be doing something at home. You need to make sure that you're ready. Drop the hint. Hit them up, manscaped.com. Put in the code WTSPOD. You'll get 20% off and free shipping. It's the perfect gift, and you're getting a discount thanks to us. So head on over, manscaped.com, WTSpod at the checkout. You'll get 20% off and free shipping. Happy Valentine's Day from us and Manscaped. Hello everybody and welcome to WTS 227. My name is Danny Murray.
And I'm Graham Merrigan. How are you, Danny?
I'm good, I'm doing good, man. Yeah, I'm flying this week. I'm flying. How are you getting on?
Yeah, I'm off work. I had to take carryover leave before March, so I've been off for a few weeks and I'm a bit lockdown fatigue. I'm okay, like generally speaking, I'm okay, but I'm a bit weary. I don't know. I guess I just watched before we went on air. I watched RT Investigates from Tala Hospital, and it left me very sad, emotional. It left me angry. And I was saying to myself, will I say it to Danny on the pod for the discussion? I said, feck it, I will. Yeah, it's just, it left me angry in the sense that there's still people out there that's calling this a hoax, and they call the RT Investigate shows on COVID, they call them propaganda things. And it's just like, I just think those people are a bit unhinged. I think if you're watching, like, this was never about the lockdowns and COVID and the restrictions and stuff like that. It's about looking after the hospital capacity.
Yeah.
As much as it's about looking after society, from a you and I point of view, and from our neighbours, our family, and stuff like that. And I just kind of thinking, if you're watching that and you're still shouting that it's a hoax and that it's a propaganda, I mean, it's just that part of it had me angry. And then I was also angry, and you can tell me if I'm being irrational, but I mean, those deaths in January, the 1,000 deaths, if there was so many deaths in such a short space of time in Trump's America or Johnson's Britain, we would be calling them a calamity, and we'd be pointing the finger at the likes of Donald Trump and the
Mm.
likes of Boris Johnson. And I just don't think there's much of that in Ireland in terms of accountability to Micheál Martin, to Leo Varadkar, to Eamon Ryan. It's like, lads,
I think,
if yous hadn't lifted, if you had done what you were told from the scientists and from the
mm,
professionals, we wouldn't have lost 1,000 people in January.
yeah, I think, now I didn't watch the thing because somewhat selfishly, I'm trying to just look after myself a little bit better. I've been finding this lockdown a little bit tougher than the previous two, and I've made a conscious effort to watch less current affairs or that kind of stuff, because like I'm eating and breathing it in work. I don't like, just when I finish doing me 9 to 5, I'm kind of like, yeah, do you know what? I need to switch. I need a disconnect from it, because it's getting me blood pressure up, and it's not good. But at the same time, you can't ignore it. So while I haven't seen that particular RTE show that you're talking about, in terms of people calling it a hoax, um, I think those people, like, they're the type of people that, like, COVID could be personified in a human body with the ability to speak and communicate absolutely perfectly. It would walk up on the street and it would say, I've infected you now. I am the disease. I'm here to stay. And they'd be like, nah, mate, don't believe you. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? They don't want to, and they'll pull down the shutter because whether it's big pharma or big tech or the deep state or whatever QAnon bullshit they've read,
yeah,
that appeals to them, and they know better than you, and they have to be. So they look for that, and they look for confirmation bias and this kind of circular economy almost of nonsense. And if you look at it, I think you actually sent me a video. Downey O'Sullivan put it up, and it's this thing around how, particularly QAnon, there's always something new. There's always a new part of the conspiracy theory that fuels those who believe it. Like, so the one that you're seeing a lot, separate from COVID, is the Trump one, where they're
yeah,
like, yep, that's it. Yeah, yeah. Now, January 6th didn't happen, but March 4th, you wait and see. March 4th, there's going to be public executions, and Donald Trump is going to emerge as being in power. And it's like, what
yeah.
the fuck are these lads on?
What are
But I
they
think
on?
I think the problem is you've got that in one sense, and the rise of the right wing and the rise of the conspiracy theorists is something we all need to kind of just be a little bit wary of, and we need to pay attention to. But in terms of accountability, and in terms of, should as many people in Ireland have passed away from this pandemic as they have, I would always say no. A lot of these deaths should have been and were preventable.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
I do think political accountability will come into it. Now, look, it's complete hearsay, and it's complete speculation to believe anybody else in the hot seat would have done better. But you can look at what's being done and you can find the flaws. And while you or I, with the pressure that people are under in those positions, and we may have responded in the same way, who knows? But what we do know is they didn't follow the advice. They broke from the scientific advice. I don't buy into this whole thing of NEFIT being this unelected superpower that's out there to try and fucking hurt people. Stop that nonsense right now, lads. They're medical
Yeah,
experts and scientists, and they specialise in this shit, and they're looking at it based on the evidence that they have available at the time and saying, this is how we would take it. That's all they're doing. They're not looking to benefit fucking Ryanair. They're not looking to benefit big supermarkets, or they're not looking to benefit any part of the economy. And anyone who's saying the economy over people, as far as I'm concerned, needs to take a long, hard look in the mirror. Because if you gave them the simple choice of, here, listen, I'll tell you what, you can have your economy and you can have all that, but at Christmas next year, your man dad won't be sitting at the table. Let's see
yeah,
what choice they'd make. And that sounds horrible, maybe, but that's how I'm looking at it. I'm like, you know what? Yeah, look, the economy can be rebuilt. We've been through recessions before. Boom bust is part of the cycle. That's free market capitalism in a nutshell. Means you're going to get all that bullshit. But a
yeah.
pandemic that comes once a century, hey, But Jesus, sorry, tangent there and a ramble. But
No, it's. I just said I'd bring it up because you do see a lot of commentators. and I don't mean like political correspondents or anything like that. I just mean
Oh, no,
jokes.
I know what you mean, yeah.
I just mean jokes of Twitter users that you'd follow commentators, and they would point the finger at Trump and they would point the finger at Johnson. And I'm kind of going, can you just look closer to home here? I mean, why aren't you pointing the finger at Leo Varadkar and Micheál Martin and Eamon Ryan? I mean, they're the leaders. They're they're in cabinet at the moment. They're the ones that decided to lift restrictions against the wishes of a 40-person team in Neffet. And
I think it was the journal.ie done one of their fact check pieces, which are brilliant. I love when they do them because they just boil it down to brass tacks. And I think they had a specific piece on, did the government follow Neffet's advice or did they break it when they eased restrictions prior to Christmas? And they categorically found that they strayed from the advice.
Yeah, of course.
They didn't adhere to it. So despite you've got, and I think as well there's an element of kind of the...
They wrote that piece on the back of Stephen Donnelly saying that we did listen. Stephen Donnelly said we did listen to Neffet, and it's like, no, you didn't.
Stephen Donnelly, my opinion, and look, I freely admit, I am like, look, there's people out there who are far, far, far more intelligent and have far more reasoned opinions than I do. I'm just an armchair pundit who, I read a little bit of stuff, and a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing. But in my opinion, Stephen Donnelly being the Minister for Health, as far as Leo, as far as Micheál Martin, and as far as Eamon Ryan are concerned, Stephen Donnelly being the Minister for Health is the equivalent of, a good day for bad news. He takes the heat away from them. Stephen Donnelly is right now a fucking magnet for the palpable anger that people are feeling. And the thumbs up debacle didn't help him. His trampoline comments, and it's just his general arrogance in interviews. So right now, as long as he's taking heat away from Leo, from Micheál Martin, of Eamon Ryan, he's doing them boys a favour. Whether it's intentional or not, whether it's by design or not, I don't know. But that's how I'm looking at it. They're quite thankful that they have a little bit of a lemon doing that.
Yeah, big time. I just said I'd bring it up anyway. Anyway, who are we speaking to tonight, Daniel?
Jesus Christ. Thankfully, our guest this week is far more versed in matters of politics and is far more versed and far more knowledgeable than we could ever pretend to be. And I say that thankful because I'm conscious we've just gone on about a 10-minute rant where we're sprouting our own opinions. But thankfully we have an expert who can talk to us and break stuff down and everything else. She is the wonderful Aoife Moore. Absolutely delighted to welcome back one of our favourite guests. She's only been on the podcast once before, but it was a memorable experience for all of us. And it's nearly a year today since she was back. She's now political correspondent with the Irish Examiner, grabbing bylines and front pages all over the place. Aoife Moore, how are you?
Hello. Thanks for having me back. Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary to you, yeah. Look at this.
One whole year together, guys.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And yeah, you've been leaving me on red a lot lately. and my laptop just hit the deck.
You alright?
Yeah, it's grand. It's just the box I have it on was wobbly, so I'll fix that. Don't worry about it. We'll plow on as if we're professionals.
Did you both?
I'm sure this is how Joe Rogan does it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Did you both like my Beyonce thing?
Yeah, that was disturbing.
As I said to you, Graham, an afro would suit you.
Mm.
I'm going to put her up on the podcast Twitter page.
Dude,
I think everyone.
You're fond of that face swap app, aren't you?
There's nothing else to do.
It freaks me out.
There's some of them that are too. You've done one or two of me, and I've been like, that's me. Nightmares for the month now. I can't hack this.
The ones I used to find really funny. Would you ever do the face swap? You see it, and it's people have done it with their baby, and it's like the dad's face on the baby's face.
They freak me out. I can't hack it. I don't know what it is about face swap. I'm just like, nope, I'm out.
Yeah. They are absolutely crazy. Friends of mine, we have a WhatsApp group, and we just three of us, and there's no conversation. It's just pictures of his brother and his brother's baby in a face swap, and all different. It's not that active now, but it'll be active maybe every 3 months, where we go, look at this, and you're just looking at it, and it just freaks the shit out of you. Hilarious.
Now, see, I'd be terrified. One night I'll wake up in a cold sweat and standing over me will be a fully grown man with a baby's head, and it just terrifies me. It just the thought of that terrifies me.
There's nothing else to do, Danny. So I love the app.
I'm not changing the nappy, lads. I am not changing. True, there isn't a whole lot else to do at the moment. I'm still recovering from my laptop taking a spill, lads. So bear with me. Very professional, Aoife. I'm sure you get this on RTE all the time.
It's grand. I think everybody's the same.
Yeah, at this stage, yeah. You're quite regular on RTE these days. You know, Saturday segment.
They've brought a northerner on. Can you believe it? Yeah, I do Louise McSharry on a Saturday morning. She's so sound. I'm filling in for Ellen Coyne. She's away having a baby because lockdown. What else are you gonna do? So Ellen went and had a baby. So I'm filling in for her. So it means I can't drink on a Friday night, which is it's probably a good thing.
You can have one now.
I don't see the point in having one, so I'm like, I'll just keep it to the Saturday night so I can get pretty on it.
Are you still?
Yeah, you were breaking up there, but I think you're right now. Since the laptop fell, it's touching the phone.
It really is like. I thought I was being clever today, and I was like, I'm going to put the laptop on a little box. It'll be slightly higher, it'll be easier to control everything, and then the laptop falls. And I'm like, well, this is a fucking great start, to be honest.
Don't do it. Don't change it.
Yeah,
do a trial run.
Yeah, I should have done a trial run. Are people still giving you guff over your accent when they hear you on the national broadcast, Aoife?
I do get quite a lot. Less now than I used to. It tends to be always men. I would get emails and messages about. It's not so much. Sometimes it's about the accent. It's mostly about how I talk. So if I say things like, "Oh, me and Paul," I'll get like shitty emails saying, "It's Paul and I. Could you learn how to speak English?" and all this sort of stuff. But like to me, that's
that one though. That Paul and I, or me and Paul, that boils my piss when people correct that, because sometimes me and Paul is correct.
And like what they're saying though, in not so many words, is that they just don't like hearing working class people on the radio. And like my friend Fiacra is also at RTE, Fiacra O'Kenny, and he's from Finglas, and he gets similar emails and similar messages saying, could you not learn how to speak English like the way you talk? And like he's not going to change the way he talks because that's the way he talks, but he gets a lot of grief about it as well. And it's basically anyone who has a working class sort of regional accent, people will always email or send messages.
The negative reviews of our podcast on Apple tend to focus around our accents and the fact that we're woke Joe Rogan light, we were once called. And I was like, well, if we're making the money that he's making, I'd take it. But otherwise, he's a bell end. I'm not a big fan. But anyway.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'd gladly tell you that the comparison with Joe Rogan starts there, other than you both have a podcast, because I am not a fan either.
Mero's quite fond of the DMT, I heard, though. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can't. What's that Canadian philosopher who's a bit of a wanker? What's his name?
Oh, is it Jordan Peterson?
Jordan Peterson. Mero's mad for the Jordan Peterson lad. He has all his boots.
Hole. Withdraw that, you bellend. Can't stand the two of them.
I withdraw that comment. That's a horrible pox to put on somebody. I wouldn't dare.
Didn't he get really sick? He was only eating like meat and lard, and then he got really ill or something.
Did any of you read the feature?
No, I didn't get the. I'm not a subscriber to Times, but it was with the Times, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I can't remember the journalist's name, but it was fucking bonkers. Essentially,
was it with his daughter?
Well, it was meant to be with him. Yeah, it was meant to be with him, but then because of, and if something's genuinely wrong with him, like, get well soon, mate, or whatever. But like, apparently, he basically has a panic attack halfway through the interview, and has to leave. His daughter takes over, and like, it gets so bizarre, and they start talking about all these things about like medication is all like making him worse. So they sent him to Russia to this rehab clinic because her husband is Russian, and the Russians apparently were all like, "Yeah, it is medicine. We fix this." And because that's exactly how they sound in Russia. And
You sound like someone from GoldenEye, which is the best James Bond film, I will say.
It is a quality James Bond film.
Any film where Robbie Coltrane is pretending to be Russian is a film that I want to watch.
Yeah.
Is there more than one of them? Because if there is, I need to see it. But yeah, so they sent him there and they put him on this like mad restrictive diet, and now they're all on this mad restrictive diet, and apparently it's made them even more woke, and it's just bonkers. It's
or anti woke, aren't they?
Well,
sorry,
anti-woke. Yeah, that's probably more appropriate.
It's quite funny because like there's a lot of talk these days about woke, and woke to me means the same as politically correct. It just means treating people with respect. So it's weird when people use it as an insult, but like, oh, because you're so woke, and it's like, oh, because I have manners.
Yeah,
that's all it is.
Yeah, which is a shock because you're so working class, Aoife. I'm surprised that.
Working class people always have the best manners, I find. You'll never find a working class people who's cheeky to a waiter or a barman.
That's very true. That's very true. You also won't find a working class person looking at that Black Rock video from during the week and saying, "That was a good video, lads."
Yeah,
that was a good video.
Know what I thought the most about when I watched it? That even the statue of Mary looked disappointed.
Yeah. Oh my God! Like, and it's mad. I tweeted that a friend of mine who has his kids there. And he texted me back. I sent it to him and said, "What the fuck is this?" And he wrote back saying, "I had hoped you wouldn't come across it." And he was very, very embarrassed by it. And he was like, "It's absolutely, it's what did he say? He said it's insulting and it's embarrassing."
Yeah, it's
the parody ones were hilarious.
There were some absolute crackers in there, and then. What's your man's name that does all the music video thingies?
Michael Fry.
Did he do one yet?
He should. He probably will be soon.
He said one of the most common requests is the Koh Samui Cup one.
Yeah,
remember that one where the lads are sending it.
Absolutely.
Oh yes, absolutely sending it. Just total horseplay.
Yeah, that one. Oh my God, these are real people. Like, if they had made that Black Rock video the way they did and they sent it out, if they had just labelled that as a parody, you probably would have got more respect.
100%, I think so. Yeah. I think
this is a very Dublin-centred conversation. Like,
true.
As somebody not from Dublin, when you come down here, I am really struck, especially as I know because my job would include a lot more private school people than other people's. But when you come down to Dublin, and people automatically assume that you know, first of all, what these schools are, who goes to them, and what the people who go there are like. And like, you'd find around Leinster House, people would be like, "Oh, isn't that so typical of Hamlow? Like, that's so Gonzaga." And I'm standing there like, what is a Gonzaga?
Is that one of those things they row down the canal? Is that what that is?
Like, I was like, what's a Gonzaga? And they were like, "Oh, it's the school to go to." And like, I didn't know obviously what Blackrock was, and like, I think in Dublin especially, you tend to think that these places are famous, and they're actually not. It's like, if you ever walk around Trinity, like before COVID, they'd often have press conferences for different things in Trinity, in the college grounds or whatever, and it's really hard to navigate. But Trinity people think Trinity is like the center of the earth. So if you're there and you're like, I'm looking for the science building. They probably have better names than the science building, but whatever. Like, if you say, "I'm looking for the science building," and the person will stop and be like, yeah. So if you just go down towards the quad there, and then you pass the statue of Jesus, and it's just there on your left. And I was like, "Where's the quad? What is the quad? Where's Jesus?" Like, they assume that you know the grounds of Trinity, because why would you not know the grounds of Trinity? And I find that with the schools as well. They were like, "Oh, well, she went to," or it often comes up when you're talking about politicians like Mary Lou or whatever, like, "Oh, she went to blah blah blah," or Notre Dame College or whatever. And I was like, "All right." And they were like, "That's private." And I had to be like, "All right, okay," because when you're talking to people and you're not from Dublin, they kind of will speak to you as if you're supposed to know what all these things are, whereas in the north, like, it's totally alien that anyone would ever go to a private school. Like, I think there is one private school in Belfast, but I actually don't know, because I don't know anyone who's been to a private school.
Is there none in Derry?
No, definitely not.
The system up there is like, isn't there some? And I could be getting this wrong, but when you're like age, like 8 or 9 or something, don't you do a test, and that test decides whether you go into like a grammar school or a
Yeah,
something?
so it's called the 11 plus, and you do it when you're 11. But
So
this
it's
is
not 8 or
basically
9,
like,
right? Okay.
no, it's not the 8 or 9 plus. But it's been going since like my dad was at school. I think it came in like the 60s, early 60s. But it's basically a test. When I was doing it a long time ago, it was marked out of 75. I don't know if that's still the case, but the way it was when I was at school was you did the 11 plus, and then you got your results. So you got like an A, it went A, B1, B2, C1, C2, D. And then depending on what you got, you applied to schools, you know, like you applied to university. You applied to schools and they would say, they get your results as well, and then they accept you for whatever. So if you've applied to say one college and then you get an A, they'll accept you or whatever. So your 11 plus results day, you'll find out what you got, but you don't find out the school that you're going to until like a month or so later. But they tried to, like Martin McGuinness, when he was the education minister, really wanted to get rid of it. There's been campaigns by, like, I think the Alliance Party and stuff are against it as well, to get rid of it because it puts 11-year-olds under like a massive amount of unneeded stress. And like, especially like when I was cutting about, if people had like wealthier parents, they got tutors, and people who didn't have wealthy parents didn't get tutors. And you know, you'd hear these horror stories about like people being sent to like tutors for 3 hours after a full day at school, or going on a Saturday. My family were like, you're not doing that. We're not wasting money on tutors. But they have, you don't have to do it now. So you used to have to do it, but you don't have to do it now. But schools will do their own transfer test. So if a school is a grammar school, it has quite a high opinion of itself, they'll have their own transfer test where you go to the school and you sit an exam that's like the 11 plus, and they decide based on the mark that you get then. It's all very, very strange. Like when you hear, especially people who live in, like, I lived in Scotland for years, and you ask people like, oh, like, how do you end up at secondary school? They just go to the one that's closest to their house, which, like, to me makes a lot more sense, but it's completely different up there. But it's an ongoing thing. I don't think we'll ever fully be rid of it, because also we still have the Catholic Protestant dynamic going on as well. I say Catholic Protestant, it's Catholic / everybody else. So for instance, my cousin is married to a Hindu fella, and he had to go to school in the Waterside in Derry, which is typically where the Protestants lived in Derry, and he had to go to an integrated school, which usually just means Protestants, and for that part of the Waterside was just Protestants and Hindus. So when they met, him and my cousin met, he knew all the words to the sash, but he's Indian. But because like that's the school you went to, and all his friends were Protestant, because obviously there wasn't a massive Indian community in Derry anyway. So like all his friends are Protestants, and they all supported Rangers, and they all like sang the sash when they all went to the pub and stuff like that. So it's mad how like it kind of divided, because Catholics could only take Catholics, but the integrated schools had to take everybody.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mad system. I think when you're 11 down here, the thing you worry about most is rather your mate's big brother has told you the truth about what you're doing with women. That was the thing. That was the thing that terrified all of us going into secondary school.
Speak for yourself.
It's like, I have kissed a girl, but she lives in my granny street, and you wouldn't know her. So
yeah. I did. No, I'm not a frigid. No, I kissed a girl in Spain on my holidays.
I
was the other one. I was the other one. My best friend at school was also called Aoife, and she had quite the romantic life on holidays, but never seemed to kiss anybody in Derry.
Classic. But that whole kind of private school and Black Rock and all that kind of stuff, like, that seeds itself into a lot of kind of life in Ireland in terms of grown-up world. Like earlier on, I seen you had an article today, I think it was, today when we're recording this, about kind of Dáil committees and the fact that only 40% of them have female members. It's a bit of a boys' club mentality kind of everywhere, isn't there?
Totally boys club. Like the story today is about cabinet committees, so that's like subcommittees within the cabinet for ministers. And the thing that annoyed me the most was that there's a subcommittee on health and a subcommittee on COVID-19, and neither of those have any women ministers on them. And it just, like, especially in this country and what we have gone through in the last couple of years with repealing the eighth and cervical check, that no one at any point thought maybe we should put a female minister on the health, this cabinet subcommittee for health. And they might say, well, the Minister for Justice remit isn't really anything to do with health or COVID-19 or whatever it is, but 50% of the population is women. So even if they're, I would also argue that the Minister for Public Expenditure's remit isn't that essential to COVID, but he sits on that committee. So I think like it is just constantly all the time with politicians and with political parties is that you have to embarrass the mandate. Like there has to be quotas, and like as Holly Cairns said the other day, like there's 6 times the amount of men called Michael and who are elected TDs in Cork than there is women.
Yeah.
There's 1 woman TD out of 18 TDs in Cork, and 6 men are called Michael.
Mad.
Also, get some creativity down there. What's going on?
Yeah, that is the most Irish stat I've ever heard in my life. Like it's just ridiculous. But it's like, and it's mad because you constantly hear there's constantly like reports being published, and I'm conscious as well that like me and Mero are 2 blokes who have a podcast, and we're trying to now talk about kind of like, oh, we need to do more for women kind of thing. But you constantly hear these reports about kind of gender pay gaps and about, like you were saying there, quotas and, how things like kind of any of the negatives you hear out there kind of disproportionately affect women. And yet, every year we're having the same conversations, and around March 8th, it's the same topics, it's the same things. Like, is there any progress being made?
Like, I would say but the statistics don't really show it. Like, in the Dáil, in the last election, like when we last spoke in February, I think we gained just 1 female TD, which is pretty depressing, especially because when it comes to community groups and community activism, women tend to be the backbone of those kind of groups, and that kind of, especially, like charity work and advocacy and stuff, like they're really female dominated. But what women are saying to me, and what you often find, is that the political party structure, whether like it's a local group or a local common or whatever it is, it doesn't really lend itself very much to women because they tend to be run by men. They tend to be at awkward hours where women might have more childcare responsibilities. They're more likely to look after elderly, like parents, like stuff like that. And like it's all well and good. This is the other thing. I actually think it was Lynn Rianne who said this once. But the other thing is like there's, having a quota for elections or whatever is one thing, but there is no point putting women on tickets who aren't going to win. You know what I mean? So if there's, say, somewhere, we'll use Fianna Fáil just as an example, but say there's a 2, like Cork, right? So we'll use Cork South Central, right? So that's a 2-seater for Fianna Fáil, or Michael McGrath and Micheál Martin or whatever. Then sticking a woman as the 3rd candidate on that ticket, knowing that she's not going to win that seat because those 2 are usually a long time politicians or long time ministers or whatever it is. Those 2 men are going to win those 2 seats, and they know there isn't 3 quotas there enough, for the woman. So there's often this thing too that like this notion that it's always the way we've done things. These are safe seats because of this particular man. So you'll see political parties, they'll put enough women on to get their quota, but they're not actually doing anything to go out of their way to see women get elected. And the other thing is, I think it always stands out, is that men have far more confidence than women, whether they're whether they're enabled to or not, right? They have way more confidence, and like men are rarely asked to stand, where they'll put themselves forward, whereas women wait to be asked. And I remember thinking about this before, and I was thinking about like really strong women in the Dáil, and went and asked a couple of them, did you put yourself forward for election, or were you asked? And people like Mary Lee McDonald and Rabbit, people like women that we have known as like really strong performers in the Dáil, they didn't put themselves forward for election. They had to be asked to stand. So there is something as well in saying to women that you can be a politician and then you can be a minister, and that we need people like you in the Dáil. And I do think, the more we see parties who actually try with their female candidates, the Social Democrats are a really good example, but then they have two women at the head, like Sinn Féin, they have two women at the head. So it's more likely they're going to attract more women and be more supportive of women if women are at the head of the party. So, and then there's other like issues as well, is like people are just less likely to vote for women. That's the other issue. And then the political party who all you care about is winning some seats, why would you risk it? You know what I mean? Like, there are great candidates who just didn't get elected, and my AirPod just fell out there. But as it's a lot to do with the mindset as well, and like there is no point setting all these quotas and saying we want more women in politics, but not going out of your way to do anything about it. TDs still don't get maternity leave. Only now has someone decided we should probably give them maternity leave. We should also probably allow them to vote from home. Like the bill to vote from home has only recently come on this week. So, like everything else, there's plenty of chat about it, and like there are things we could do now to make it better. But also the other side of it is it's a really thankless job, even if the money is really good, and people are really hateful. And would you be bothered?
That there's two things you said there that really jump out to me about just how skewed politics in Ireland is to being male dominated. There's no parameter for maternity leave. And then when you combine that with, is it Regina Doherty is the first sitting TD who's going to have a baby, while
Helen McEntee.
Helen McEntee.
She's the first sitting cabinet minister who's going to give birth while she's in cabinet.
Yeah, and so that combined with the fact that there's no provision for maternity leave just says how little has been thought of women in politics throughout the history of the Dáil.
And also that women before this have never felt comfortable enough to bring it up.
Yeah.
If they were comfortable enough to bring it up, nothing ever got done. But there is also a notion of like, I talked about this when I did my piece on sexual harassment as well, that you don't want to say anything because then it's used against you, like, oh, she's always complaining, or she's always giving off, or she's a crier, or whatever. So once you're in there is that kind of temptation to like just put your head down and get on with, because you don't want to be seen then as like, oh, she's always complaining and she wants maternity leave and all this sort of stuff. So you can see why people, don't want to bring it up. But I do think it is changing. And Helen McEntee actually put out a really good statement when they came out that she was pregnant. She said that she was taking maternity leave and she would be taking the full maternity leave. And she said that she wasn't just doing it for her and her baby, but she was doing it for female politicians as well, because she shouldn't have to feel that she has to rush back to work. They should be allowed to take their maternity.
Is there this kind of faux kind of heroin thing that you hear these stories of, like, oh, she was back to work 3 weeks after giving birth? Like, when I hear that, I'm kind of like, if that's what she really wanted, great, but like, come on,
Yeah, I think there is a bit of that, like, oh, isn't she great? And she was back at work, within a couple of months. And I think it's a really, really sad indictment on either society or the person's job, that you could go through such a life-changing thing and body-changing thing as having a baby and then feel like you would have to go back to work. The other thing about this is like, it's never enough for women to just ask for something which should be a right. Like, we had, I think her name's Catherine Stalker, she's a Social Democrat councillor in Dublin, and she went through an incredibly hard labour and her baby actually died, and she was back to the council within 2 weeks because they don't have any provision for maternity. And she said even when she was in intensive care with her baby, she was worried about the work that she was missing because they don't get maternity. So she was like just taking obviously the time off her own back, and then she went back to work after the baby died. And like, women also shouldn't have to tell the public these incredibly heartbreaking stories in order to be listened to. Like, the worst possible thing shouldn't have to happen to you so you can get a basic right that you would get if you worked in Tesco's.
Absolutely.
I was listening to the radio the other day as well, and as well as politics in terms of the quota, I found very ironic that the topic of conversation was end period poverty, and all the panelists were men.
Oh,
how the fuck does this make sense, lads?
Just sitting chatting about whether they have a preference of tampons and pads. Like,
do you know what I mean? It's like if like, is that researcher on the show or the producer like
a man?
I just don't know what they're thinking. Like if they were to be questioned for it, would they say, "Oh well, we tried to get women and we couldn't"? Well, if you tried and you couldn't,
people say.
Well, if you tried and you couldn't get them, don't have the conversation. Wait until you can get women.
Yeah, that's like, I've called out a couple of TV programs and a couple of radio shows a couple of times on social media saying, why are you only having men having this conversation? And it's not necessarily about women's issues, all issues. Like, unless it's literally about like testicular cancer, you should have a woman on. And even then, women know men with balls, so.
There seems like a perfect segue here to our Manscaped ad, so I'm just going to put that in, and then we'll come straight back.
We'll be right back to our guest, but first we need a quick word from our friends at Manscaped, the global leaders in men's below-the-waist grooming. Valentine's Day is right around the corner, and you need to make sure you're ready for that special day. Manscaped will sort you out because they have the right tools for your family jewels, and all you have to do is drop the hint. If your loved one is struggling for a gift this year, just tell them, head on over to manscaped.com, pop in the code WTSPOD, you get 20% off and free shipping. Trust us, it'll be a great gift for you and a great gift for them. Hit up for the Perfect Package 3.0. It is led by the third generation revolutionary trimmer, the Lawnmower 3.0, with its skin-safe technology and its cutting-edge ceramic blade, so you'll have no nicks, no tugs, no scratches. It's incredible, it really is. There's loads of bits and pieces in that Perfect Package 3.0 to keep your town halls looking great, feeling great and smelling great. Trust us, you won't be sorry. Head on over, manscaped.com, use the code WTSPOD, get rid of that 80s retro bush. It's head trimming season, lads, and you need the Lawnmower 3.0 to get you through. Manscaped.com, WTSPOD, 20% off, free shipping. Your balls will thank you. Back to our guest.
Called out people before saying, like, why do you only have men talking about whatever issue it is? And they'll say, oh, like, we tried to get a woman, but like we couldn't get anyone. And, you know, it's hard to believe that you couldn't find one woman on the end of a phone. No one is coming into studios now anyway. Everyone is ringing in and doing stuff over Skype. So you can speak to women, especially on TV programs. Like, there's no excuse on TV programs now because like, I'm just using these as the example, but like, for instance, like the Tonight Show or Prime Time, like at least 2 of the guests come in via Zoom anyway. So there's just no reason why they can't, you know, even if they had childcare or whatever issue a woman might have for not coming on, that can be dealt with a lot easier now. But I do think, like, the more people call stuff like that out, like I called out a TV show about 6 months ago, and the presenter actually DM'd me on Twitter and was quite annoyed about it. But they haven't made the same mistake since. Now, I'm not saying that was to do with me, but I do think that kind of pressure, and people are realising it. And I think what you do notice a lot more now is men saying, here, oh, what's going on here? Like, could you not find one woman?
Was that presenter that DM'd you, were they giving out to you?
Yeah.
Oh,
they said, well, you know, all my producers are women, and I'll take offence on their behalf because we try really hard to get women on the show. And I said, well, I didn't mean any offence to your producers, but I'm sure that you can realise having X amount of guests, not one of them were women, and the host is also a man, doesn't look very good in 2020. And then they didn't reply. But yeah, I'm sure he's over it now.
I do go mad as well, like with disability issues at a
Yeah, I was
government level.
just gonna say, like, there's no one for all things like that, whether it's women's issues or disabilities or immigration. It's so rare that you have someone, even especially at a government level, not even like the civil servants, but even at a government level or civil service, that actually would, have a first-hand kind of knowledge about the thing. And we see it, like, the most common one I see all the time is like there's been a Garda crackdown on sex workers, and the Garda's doing loads and loads of media about what they're doing about sex workers. And the laziest journalism is the journalists who print what the Garda are saying, and then that's the end of the article, even though we have a full alliance of sex workers with a press officer who will tell you what they think is happening. And it's just basic journalism to me. But I think you'll know yourself, Mero, like when it comes to disability issues, it's exactly the same.
It's exactly the same, and it's infuriating at the stakeholders and the decision makers, and none of them have experience of disability. We had Finian McGrath, whose daughter is with a disability, and I think Finian tried his best, but he just had stumbling block after stumbling block. And I met him a few times. He came out to a couple of basketball matches, and I'd met him prior to his election, and I felt a human kind of connection almost. And then when he was elected, I felt like it was just a rushed thing. It was just like, oh yeah, we'll sort that. Of course we will. And then just see you later. I was like, hold on a minute. It's just, it's very annoying. Sorry, I was just thinking out loud there.
But you'll find that way most ministers. Like, look at, when it comes to government, like, no one gets what they want. Look what's happened to the Greens. I know it's a slightly different thing with Finian, but like, it is one of those things that once you become a minister, like, promises that you made before don't really mean anything in the long run. And we're seeing this a lot now with the Greens, because being in government is a completely different kettle of fish.
Yeah, they have,
especially with the Senate stuff.
It's not been a good week for them. Like, even just today, for like people listening, today was the day that they gave in over the road. The road. That's what we call it in the office now. The road. The road in Limerick that they've been fighting over for 4 weeks. The fight is over. Eamon Ryan gave in. The road is happening. But and this is in the midst of all the CETA Canada trade deal stuff. So it's not been an easy. It's not easy being Green.
It hasn't been an easy year for the Green Party with grassroots people leaving them, bullying, allegations of bullying. It's actually been a shit show considering their government party.
Yeah, like I've spoke to a lot of people who have left, and they basically all kind of say the same thing: is that they had such a quick upsurge in popularity. Like, they gained a lot of supporters really, really fast in the months leading up to the election, and they didn't really have a conversation about what the party was about. All parties are a broad church, but the Greens literally had like everyone from, people who would vote Fine Gael, Green Party, and then there was people who would vote like People Before Profit, Green Party, and like there was no solid conversation about what they would and wouldn't give up in government or whether they would go in to government. That's why, like, when Saoirse McHugh came out and said, well, if they go in with Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, I'm going to leave, because for a lot of people like that in the party, that was totally unthinkable. And I think that's the lesson. They didn't learn anything from the last time. They didn't really discuss what the party was. And also, if you looked at the Green Manifesto and the policies that they had like agreed on, they're a really, really, really left-wing, like social democratic party. Like, they're, even when you look at some of the stuff, like it's mad. You compare it to the people in government, but like, they're against they're for the decriminalisation of sex work. They're for the decriminalisation of drugs. They're against the special criminal court. Like, these are all very People Before Profit, lefty type things. But like, that's not really reflective of the party that they have in government now.
Yeah, I think, and this is pure anecdotal because I am not a politico in any way, shape or form. But like, for example, I voted for the Greens as one of my transfers. Partially the whole vote left, transfer left kind of appealed to me, and I thought like, all right, grand. But the other side was, I was kind of looking at it and I was saying, all right, look, the world is on fire. right? You had the fires in Australia, the Amazon was on fire,
Mm-hmm.
you had David Attenborough making a sad TV show every couple of months, you had Donald Trump out there saying climate change wasn't real. You had all these things, and I was kind of like, if Ireland's going to have a climate action plan, and if Ireland is actually going to do anything, like, we're a fucking small island in the Atlantic, we'll get swallowed if climate change gets really bad. So in my head, I was like, I'm going to consciously vote Green in the hope that then amplifies a voice for we'll get something good out of climate change. And there's been some progress, and you see some things around, like, developments around green energy and environmental stuff improving, but it's all the other stuff that you guys have mentioned that makes me go, oh, would I vote for him again?
Well, even their green stuff in the manifesto, like, People Before Profit was far more greener than the actual Green Party in some of their stuff, like, and even Sinn Féin to a certain extent as well. I thought, and it's funny you were saying there about the Green Party's manifesto, because their stuff on disability was a copy and paste job from People Before Profit, as far as I'm concerned, because I went looking on all the manifestos for stuff on disability, and it was like I was reading what People Before Profit were saying. In the year that we spoke to you last, Aoife, and with the Green Party's deal with the devil, so to speak.
There's completely non-biased there, Mero.
Yeah. Do you think
deal with the devil? Sorry, can we just pull this back a second there? Can we just deal with the devil? Is there an element of drama in that one, man? Or...
Oh, absolutely! Like, you had people leaving the party over their deal with the devil. So, actually, it's funny you mentioned Saoirse McHugh, and we were talking about quota and men complaining to you, and you're on RTE on a Saturday. When she decided to leave the Green Party, she was absolutely attacked by men on
Pointed.
Twitter. Absolutely hounded. It was crazy. But do you think they'll be decimated should a general election be called, or in the next general election?
I don't think they'll do as badly as people think they will. I think the Greens and Fine Gael are very much hitched to the same wagon now, whether either party likes it or not. I think there are a lot of really well-off people who are really concerned about the climate emergency, and they want people like Eamon Ryan and Ossian Smith and Catherine Martin. They're cut from the same cloth. They're all very well mannered and come across really well, and like, they're not the type of socks and sandals and muesli eating Green Party that they were concerned about. That kind of, I do think people keep saying like, oh, the Greens are going to be wiped out, the Greens are going to be wiped out, but I think if this government lasts the distance, I think most of the ministers will maybe, I was going to say most of the ministers will keep their job, most of the Green ministers will keep their job, but there's some who will keep their job, and I do think it'll be because they're good partners in government. Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, they're seen as, steady hands. I think Catherine Martin's well liked in the ministry she's in, because the ministry she's in is, although it's tourism and stuff, it's also a lot to do with the arts and people who go to the theatre and that kind of stuff. So I think because they've been such good partners in government, there will be a reward for people like that. And I think some of them might keep their seats, but I think anyone who basically got their seat from vote left, transfer left, I don't want to name any names or anything, but like, you don't know what's going to happen. But I don't think they'll win any seats. But I think they might hang on to a couple. I don't think they'll be decimated, because I think there are people who would naturally maybe vote Fine Gael and would vote for the Greens as well, because they are worried about the climate.
In terms of those political bedfellows, and you're saying like Fine Gael and Green, kind of they're hitched to the same wagon and whatever. Earlier this week, we heard rumblings from Fianna Fáil that the Sinn Féin bed is starting to look a little bit more comfortable. That's that's quite a development, surely.
It's actually not. After the election, I spoke to a Fianna Fáil TD, who reckoned that nearly 2/3 of the party would be open to talking to Sinn Féin, but they didn't want to tell me all. So it's not actually that shocked. You can speak to Sinn Féin TDs who'll tell you that there have been Fianna Fáil TDs saying to them since before the election that they thought they should go on together. I think if Micheál Martin had the chance, he would roll them out completely. But I think he knows next time around he's probably not going to get the chance. We've already had Big Jim, who we talked about the last time I was on the pod.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Big Jim has always been kind of flagging that he wouldn't rule out Sinn Féin. He's also on a one-man band crusade to take Micheál's job. So I'm not overly shocked, because I think what Micheál Martin says and what most of the people in his party say tend to be two different things. And this has been going on for quite a while. There's been quite a lot of kind of backroom conversation about the fact that Fianna Fáil would be open to get into government with Sinn Féin, because a lot of people in Fianna Fáil don't see themselves as having anything in common with Fine Gael. At the end of the day, they still see it as that's the old enemy, and they don't really want anything to do with them. They don't see any commonality between themselves and the likes of Regina Doherty and Leo Varadkar or whatever. So I would not be one bit surprised. And I'd say when it comes up to the next election, there'll be very much less Sinn Féin bashing from Fianna Fáil, but from Fine Gael and the Greens, you'll see it a lot worse, because it's going to become a very clear split in the next election, I think.
Is Micheál Martin having a bit of a torrid time in terms of like you were saying there, that he's saying one thing, but then the party ranks are saying another thing, and he has something similar going on with his Taoiseach, and he says something, and then Leo seems to come out and say something else. He's trying to hold it all together, in fairness to him, but it's not an easy job right now. Like,
no, it's not, and I do think his TDs do him a massive disservice. I think at the end of the day, Micheál Martin has put in the years with Fianna Fáil, brought them back from the brink, although he hasn't been that successful in the last 10 years. If they didn't get into government this time in February, Micheál Martin would no longer be the leader of Fianna Fáil. They just wouldn't have stomached it. I think getting Fine Gael and the Greens together stands to him, and the fact that Fianna Fáil are back in power stands him. He's a Taoiseach, but and they do a great disservice. But then they do him a great disservice because they don't feel like he listens to them. They don't feel like he listens to the members. He only listens to a small group of advisors. When you hear people like, Mark McSharry going off as nut in the PP, say what you want about Mark McSharry, but Mark McSharry is the only person who's really saying it to Micheál's face. There's plenty of backroom chatting going on behind Micheál Martin's back, and Micheál Martin knows there is. But at least, whatever you think of Mark McSharry, I'd so much rather somebody said it to my face and said it behind my back, because you could pick up a paper any day of the week. We could fill the paper every day of the week with off-the-record commentary about Micheál Martin, but nobody wants to say it on the record. And it's a larger kind of problem within Fianna Fáil, and it's what got them into government with Fine Gael and the Greens was, well, nobody really wanted to tell Micheál because he wouldn't listen to you anyway. And that's kind of the reason why he is the way he is now.
It's a mad, mad world we're living in. Well, around the corridors of Leinster House at least. But
I think it's always been like this, though. There are always kind of mutinies going on against people.
Yeah, I was going to say one of the lighter things that I've seen coming out of Leinster House this year, Aoife, has been your Instagram stories, where you give us little behind the scenes of all the different things going on.
I'm like the anti-Richard Chambers. He gives you all the news, and I'm just like, here is the girls' bathroom, and here's the coffee machine.
It's class, though. I think it's one of the things. I think me and Mero were saying this. I think it was around Christmas time we were talking about, Mero, where I don't know, maybe it's just because I didn't pay as much attention to the news previously or whatever, but I feel like over the last sort of 12 day months, the public are blessed with kind of the riches that the fourth wall has given us, in terms of obviously yourself, Aoife, you've got Sarah King, you've got Richard Chambers, Gav Riley, it's just this fucking array of deadly journalists who not only have embraced social media and started to kick on with that, but who are producing just quality work. And it's all those elements combined that are yeah, fair enough. Richard Chambers isn't giving us, well, it'd be weird if he's giving us the girls' bathrooms, but you know what I mean? He's not giving us the behind the scenes as such. But I don't know, I think that more of that sort of stuff is what people need. It normalises some of the things that previously you just didn't know about.
I think so too, and I think the pandemic. Like a couple of people have said that to me, but the pandemic has really brought out the best in some young journalists, like the likes of Rob O'Hanrahan, and you said about Zara King and Richard and Paul Hosford as well. And I think it was just, I don't know if it was the pandemic or everybody paying more attention to the news or what it was, but like I think as well, like the big issue with journalism, and I like say this with the greatest respect for the people who came before me, but I do think for a long time there'd been a kind of stagnation, not necessarily in putting out good work, but the public have felt really disconnected from journalists for a long time. And I think that also goes, like, that's a larger point that I always am banging on about Leinster House, is that if you can't relate to the people in Leinster House, like, why would you be bothered about voting if you don't see anyone who looks like you or sounds like you or acts like you? And like, why would you expect, like, we'll just use, say, Charlie Haughey for as an example, but
for God's sake,
but like for the Taoiseach or even Bertie Ahern, for that instance, like,
oh Jesus,
a person who is so very far removed from your normal day-to-day life, like the Galway tent, like that kind of part of politics, as like put people off for a really long time. And I think journalism has been seen to be part of that, whether rightly or wrongly, for a long time. And like a lot of political journalists were men, older men, very middle class. And I think it's only a good thing that journalism, now don't get me wrong, Irish journalism is still the whitest place in the world. There are very little journalists of colour, there are no disabled journalists, there isn't a vast array of LGBT journalists, but there are people now from different backgrounds. Like, not everyone went to private school, not everyone's from Dublin, not everyone has two parents or whatever kind of background it is. There are more people coming around that start to look and sound like other people, and I think that's why people relate to them as much and like a bit more. And like, for all the grief that I get, or people saying, like, I get also like, you're trashy and you're classless and you don't know how to talk and all this sort of stuff. I think for all that, a lot of people relate to the likes of me and relate to people like Zara and relate to people like Rob and Paul, because we seem a lot more approachable, like a lot more normal. And I think that's probably what people need, especially in the pandemic. You're kind of like, you don't need journalists talking down to you.
Are you saying Vincent Brown isn't approachable?
I saw Vincent Brown once outside Buswells when I was like just starting out as a journalist. I couldn't like let him pass without like acknowledging him in some way, because it was Vincent Brown. So I waved at him really earnestly, like, "Hi, Vincent," and he went, stopped and was like, "Hi," and he goes, "Sorry, I know you," and I was like, "No."
Brilliant. I love it.
I was like, I didn't think he was going to stop. I was like, no, I just wanted to say hello. Oh, the cringe.
I think what Danny was saying at the start there was on the button. Do you think we could be lacking it in terms of, say, a Vincent Brown on television? Because at the moment, the only correlation of a broadcast journalist to in my opinion, would be Sarah McInerney. And the rest, I'm not saying the rest are bad or like, but they're just they can be a bit inconsistent. In like, if you're listening to Pat Kenny over the last 5 years, there's sometimes when you're listening to Pat Kenny, you can tell who he's voting for in the ballot box, and that's my opinion. When I'm listening to Pat, I'll be like, oh geez, you know. But with Sarah McInerney, whether it's Mary Lou McDonald she's interviewing, Micheál Martin, Leo Varadkar, she attacking is probably the wrong word to use, but she is on top of them.
Yeah, she puts them under pressure.
Finish, putting them under pressure, making them accountable. Where and she will always, if the interviewee is kind of bullshitting, or if they're saying an untruth, she'll question them on that. Whereas a lot of the other journalists broadcast journalists that I watch, you're left with going to Twitter and saying, why didn't so and so ask about this? It's blatant lies. Do you know what I mean? I think in print journalism, I think we're thriving at the moment. Obviously, some of the quotas that you mentioned need to be filled. But in broadcast journalists, I think to the best of my knowledge, I think we only have Sarah McInerney
I really like. I have great respect for Sarah. I think she's brilliant as well. Like, I think she's one of the best there is. I think like with the Vincent Brown thing as well as like, I don't know if there ever will be another Vincent Brown, and I think it's just his style naturally that is the thing that everybody remembers. I think as well, like the other side of it is because like with Vincent Brown, it kind of he gave everyone such a hard time, and I think what people, this is me totally guessing, like what I think what people think now is that when they're interviewing someone, like you don't want to be all over on top of them because people don't respond very well to that, and like people kind of clam up or whatever, or especially like there's certain politicians that journalists know that if you get a bit shitty with them, they're going to get a bit shitty with you as well. And I think that a lot of them just think they want to have the most coherent interview possible. And like for some people, it just also doesn't come natural to be like Vincent Brown, and like, you know, everyone knows like the famous Stephen Donnelly, you know, interview where he's like, "Oh, you're totally self-serving." Like a lot of people just can't do that. Like, but I do.
Do you remember Charlie O'Connor walked out on him?
I don't think I remember that one.
No, I
No.
don't know.
The SIP 2 leader, the head of SIP 2. Jack O'Connor, is it?
No. Jack O'Connor SIP 2, yeah.
Yeah, he got up and walked off.
One of the best Vincent Brown moments ever. Do you remember the whole was it Gorse Hill, I think, was the property in Cloyney that was being repossessed or whatever, and it was all over the news everywhere and all that, and people were up outside. A lot of camera crew was up outside, and Vincent Brown walks up, and he's standing there for a minute looking around, and he's like, "Why are we all outside? I'm going inside." And he crosses the threshold, and as he does, there's this almost like audible gasp from all the other journos who have assembled, and they're like, "Oh, Vincent's gone in." And he just goes, and then he looks and goes, "I'm going in," and he just keeps walking, and then all of a sudden, all of them go in, like, and it's just fucking, it's like that was the power of Vincent Brown, like.
You don't remember when he went to the Fianna Fáil? Was it? I don't know. It was a like Fianna Fáil thing.
Their AGM kind of thing.
Their AGM kind of thing, and he tore through Bertie
Ahern. Was it?
Yeah, that's the word.
Yeah. He tore through Bertie Ahern. He did as well at the when the Aircom lost all their shares. He went there and made an absolute show of all the shareholders.
I think
the other thing is as well, like from the Vincent Brown point of view, like the other thing that kind of happens now that wouldn't have happened as much then, but like when you're interviewing someone now, when you see someone or you hear somebody interviewing someone, where it's Claire Byrne or Sarah McInerney or whoever it is, if you're interviewing a certain politician, so say it's a Taoiseach, right? Say you're interviewing him. No matter what you ask and how you ask it, there will be half the people saying that you're too soft on him and you're giving him an easy go, and then the other half of the people will be saying that you were an ogre Fianna Fáil and that you're a plant and you're this, that, and the other. Yeah. Like you cannot win. This is the thing. Like that viral video of, do you remember the interview of the politician in New Zealand? And it went viral because the journalist was interviewing this, appeared to be, from what I picked up from the interview, this quite racist right-wing politician who'd basically run on a ticket of like discriminating against people, and he didn't get elected and his party did shit, and he was getting interviewed by this TV presenter, and she was basically just like shitting all over him, all over his life, all over his political career, and people were like, "My God, isn't this amazing? Why can't we have journalists like this in Ireland?" And I was dying to reply to every single one of them and say, if we had a journalist like this in Ireland who talked to someone like this on a TV show, their bricks would be going through their window. People would be saying that they're like a plant, that they deserve to be banged up. Like, you can't win anymore on social media. That's the other thing. Like, someone started a rumor, and like someone started a rumor years ago that Claire Byrne was a young Fine Gael. There's absolutely no proof to this. She's denied it numerous times. It's not true, but this is the persistent rumor. And like, if you're the journalist, you can't do anything about it. You just have to say, well, no, I'm not. But like, if you look through Claire Byrne interviewing anyone on her show, and then you look through Twitter, it's like, well, you couldn't trust Claire Byrne because she was in young Fine Gael.
I've seen that pop up.
I think Claire Byrne's very good.
I think like particularly 2020, there's two moments when it comes to journalism for me in 2020. One of them was the Sarah McInerney exasperated, where she just Oh Jesus! At the end
Oh,
of the segment,
Jesus.
I was listening to that live.
and it was that was she was everyone in that
I
moment.
can't
She
even
was everyone.
remember what that was about.
Nor can
What am I
I. I
talking
just
about?
it was just an absolute flurry, and then you could tell she was just like, "Holy shit!" Like, but it just stuck with me. And the other piece then was Golfgate, which an absolute triumph last year in terms of there wasn't like that story lit fucking Ireland on fire. Like
I'd
it
say Phil
really did.
Hogan loves you, Aoife, yeah.
Don't think he's a big fan of mine.
Yeah.
No, I actually got more hate mail when the Article 16 thing happened a couple of weeks ago because someone messaged me and was like, "If we still had Phil Hogan, this would have never happened. This is all your fault."
Oh,
Oh
are you
my god!
serious?
Oh dear, he has a lot of fans. You would not believe how many emails we got to the Examiner after Golfgate. Like, not really any, but got Dara Cleary, who is by far and away a much nicer person. But we got a lot about Phil Hogan. People are really worried about Brexit. I mean, we can't get you to click on the stories on the Examiner website, but you apparently are really worried about it when Phil Hogan loses his job.
Yeah,
And
it's,
he could have. The thing about that is that all Phil had to do was come out and apologise straight away, instead of prolonging it, instead of being the typical, kind of finger pointing elsewhere, and it prolonged and prolonged and prolonged, and then he lost his job. If he had just said sorry at the first, I didn't know, whatever, he'd be still the commissioner now.
In life, you can either be Dara Cleary or you can be Phil Hogan.
Yeah,
And I would much rather always be Dara Cleary.
yeah, absolutely.
I think so.
But
Yeah,
then you can also be Seamus Wolf and hang on to your job. So
Yeah.
the rule doesn't always make sense.
That's true. Actually, he's the one that like.
He's the
I'm
one
still
that got
baffled.
away.
I'm still baffled by that. Do you think we just wore ourselves out because of Phil Hogan, and by the time the Seamus Wolf thing came around, we were all like, "Oh, for fuck's sake!"
No, I think this was a really new thing to me as well, and I've only kind of come to realise this in the last couple of months because I was sad enough to read a book about the Supreme Court. But what I actually think it is that there is a huge nervousness on the part of politicians to get involved whatsoever when it comes to the Supreme Court.
Okay.
Because it has to have this type of independence, which obviously it needs because it has to be separate from the government. But there was this unbelievably softly approach. Anything to do with Seamus Wolf, the government was in like sheer panic mode in case they would do something that would be deemed unconstitutional or whatever it was. So I think that's what it was. I think the government didn't want to push it because there's this kind of reverence of the Supreme Court, as there always has been. And like I spoke to legal professors at the time who said they really don't need to be this cautious, like they're really over-egging it here. But that's the way they felt about it at the time, that they wouldn't push it. They left everything to the courts. The thing was, like, even then when Chief Justice Clark asked him to resign, and the big thing was that he leaked, or the letter got leaked from Chief Justice Clark asking him to resign to the Examiner, and that was seen as unbelievably scandalous on the part of the Chief Justice. That is not something a Chief Justice ever does, but he wanted everyone to know that he wanted Seamus Wolf gone. But because you can't ask a Supreme Court judge, like, you can't force them to resign, so that was really the only option he had then. So yeah, I think the reason Seamus Wolf hung onto his job is because not a lot of people understand the Supreme Court. It's very removed from public opinion. I think Irish people would be able to name a lot more Supreme Court justices in America than they would be able to name Supreme Court justices here. And I think the reason Seamus Wolf is on the Supreme Court now is because the government didn't want to get involved. They just wanted to leave it up to the courts, and Seamus Wolf knew that they couldn't sack him. So that's why he's still there.
The arrogance of it. Aoife, you're coming up to a year in the Irish Examiner on Valentine's Day. And in that year, your journalism has been exemplary. I've enjoyed a lot of your news and a lot of your articles. And your anniversary of the Irish Examiner coincides with the anniversary of the Stardust fire tragedy. It's coming up to 40 years now. Your last article, I'm embarrassed now that I don't know the woman's name, but
Keegan.
That's it, Mrs. Keegan. You wrote a brilliant article when she passed away. Will they get their inquiry this year with the Stardust?
Yeah, so they've had a couple of pre hearings basically to kind of set out what's going to happen and how it's going to happen. With COVID-19, like everything else, it just keeps getting pushed back and back because, you know, obviously there's different issues now. Cabinet meetings are being held in Dublin Castle, and the Stardust inquest is meant to be held in Dublin Castle as well. So there's issues around that because they obviously need the space so that everyone can be spaced out. And I think like the main thing that we need to remember is it's going to be the biggest ever and the longest ever running inquest in the history of the Irish state. So, and everyone has their own legal team. So the families have 2 solicitors between them. They have obviously their own staff. The Garda have a solicitor or a senior counsel. The Fire Brigade have a senior counsel. Dublin City Council has a senior counsel. The Butterleys who own the building, they have a senior counsel. They all have staff. Then there's people who will be taking notes, and there's people who will be looking after evidence, and the woman who runs the inquest, the coroner, will have her own staff as well. So it's going to be absolutely massive. And there's 49 victims as well, and all their families. So it's going to be huge. They were talking at the start saying that it was going to run until August. I would find it hard to believe if it was done by August. I think it could run well after that now. So the wheels are in motion. They're just rumbling really slowly at the minute because of COVID and because of everything else that's happening. But it will start this year. But I'd be surprised if it ended this year just because of everything else that's going on.
No. Hang on, are we still there, lads?
I'm still here. Can you see me?
Yeah, still here. Yeah.
Mero's frozen though.
All right, Mero, your screen is frozen. Yeah, I was going to say that's I got a review. Yeah, I think that one probably will. It's going to be harrowing hearing all the stuff that's coming out of that, and like the kind of I know anyone who's listened to the podcast that the Journal put out will find it, you know, that podcast is absolutely brilliant. But yeah, the inquiry is going to be absolutely harrowing. It's going to be very difficult for the families, the victims, and for anyone. But
it's crazy
it's so important that
years, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's so important that they get this. Like it's, you know, it's been long overdue. Like,
and there's also like the fear. It kind of depends who you talk to within the families, but like there's also the fear that they might not get what they want out of this because you know it's 40 years now. Memories have faded. A lot of people have died. You know, evidence will have diminished. So like the coroner, when she was kind of setting this out at the start, kind of, you know, alluded to that, and she kind of said, you know, this isn't going to be easy, and like a lot of stuff will be, you know, basically not usable, misremembered, stuff like that. So she was trying to like set that out very, you know, early on, that it's not going to be, it mightn't be what everybody wants it to be. And like I think that will be like the hardest thing, is like because these families have already been through so much and already been sort of trampled all over like a number of times. And it would be a real shame now when we know that the remaining parents are getting very old. There's very few of them left out of the 49, and I think that will be the hardest thing, is that if they don't get some kind of closure and some kind of solace, then it'll be really rough, because we saw what happened with the mother and baby homes, and we know, you know, what can happen if these things aren't done properly, and I think that'll be the hardest thing.
Definitely. Mero seems to be struggling there. I've seen a few love hearts pop up on screen, but I've not seen him return to the screen. I don't know. Are you all right there, Mero? Yeah, twice.
It was a big heart
two little
your
love hearts.
name.
Yeah. So I don't know what buttons you're pressing, man, but maybe that's it. Aoife, we have taken up enough of your time for one evening. You are a very serious journalist, and we are a very silly podcast, and it's not fair that we would do that to you. So
I'm definitely not a serious journalist. I said the word balls on your podcast.
Less of that modesty now.
Yeah,
you're one of the best in the country.
I was going to say, listen, saying balls in this podcast is mild compared to some of the other things. And considering, like, we have a thing with Manscaped, it makes perfect sense for you to say that word. Has Lisa McGee reached out to you to have a cameo in Derry Girls yet?
hasn't watched Derry Girls yet, I would say.
I haven't even watched all Derry Girls. No, she hasn't. But I did hear, I don't even know if this is true or this is what we would call Derry rumor, because a story happens in Derry and then it grows arms and legs. But somebody told me Nadine Coyle was going to be in the next series, which I would love, but I don't know if it's true or not.
Yeah. So, okay, so if Nadine is going to be in, so basically we need to start just dropping Lisa a hint to be like, Lisa, girl, Aoife over there, check her out. She's a good working class Derry accent.
Me, Lisa, and Nadine all went to that school, so prime content here.
I love Michael Fry's Nadine Coyle.
I haven't seen that one yet.
It's good. Just her lost in her passport. Mommy.
Yeah.
His Tony McGregor one tickled me something fierce. Just because I'd forgotten all about that whole coinage.
He's so talented. Like
so talented.
Like did you watch the Hands First Council one?
Yes. Brilliant.
Yes.
Unbelievable. Like I was listening to the song like it was an actual song. Like right now.
Yeah. That's the thing. You easily have a little bop to these. Like the one about your man, the young lad failing the driving test was brilliant.
Brilliant.
I didn't hear that one.
That is absolutely. He could
release an album at this stage, couldn't he?
He really could. I think he was on Radio 1 had him on, and he actually sang the Jackie Weaver Handsworth Council song to Jackie Weaver.
I love it.
He's absolutely him and Justine Stafford are two at the moment that just anything they put up, I find myself having a proper giggle at the moment. They're absolutely brilliant. But Aoife, thank you so much for coming back to us a year later.
Thank you for having me.
It seems like a year was long enough to let you forget the mayhem of the last time that you actually agreed to come on again. So we'll probably try to leave it like that again.
It brought it all back to me because it was my first ever podcast that I was ever on, and then I took a fit of laughing at the thought of Jim O'Callaghan waving to his sister on the TV.
Yeah, I'm sure the two of them have listened to it and they had a great crack over Christmas.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, if people want to hear more from you, Aoife, or they want to follow you on Twitter, it's at Aoife Grace Moore. And obviously, lads, buy an Irish Examiner, pick up a copy, or check out the website and everything else, because there's some great stuff being put on paper there. Aoife, thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Aoife.
Cheers, boys.
I've so much time for Aoife. Like she's just a fucking top class journalist and an even sounder person.
Absolutely, I love her. Love speaking to her. Love her work. Love following her. She's one of my favourite journalists of the last year.
Yeah, and I think like, and we touched on it when we were chatting to her. Like, we're blessed right now that we have such a kind of we've got a great wave of young journalists that are so good. Like, so touch wood and fingers crossed. Aoife, Zara, Gav Riley, Richard Chambers, Paul Hosford, all these guys are going to be around for a long time. And
Rob O'Halloran. And I think that Rob O'Hanrahan, isn't it?
Yeah, sorry, yeah. And I think that makes anyone who needs to be accountable maybe just look at things a little bit closer before they decide to act the bollocks,
Yeah. What was I going to say to you? I can't remember. Sorry.
It's quite all right. It's been a long evening, man.
Sorry.
I dropped my laptop. We had internet connections. Aoife's AirPods kept falling out. Look, we got it across the line. Whatever that may be. It was
very enjoyable, and I hope everyone enjoyed it.
Indeed. But anyway, that's all we have time for this week, lads. Please do check us out wherever you get your podcasts. That could be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, could be Stitcher, Podbean, Podcast Republic, Podcast Addict, anywhere and everywhere there are podcasts. You'll find us. So give it an old subscribe there. Maybe even leave a review. If it's a nice one. If you've got nothing nice to say, don't say it, please. Our sponsors won't like it. But yeah, look, why not? We don't ask for that kind of thing often. So if you like it, tell a friend and all that kind of crack. We're at WTSpod on Twitter. He is at Merrigan Mania on Twitter. I'm at Dan Joe Murray. This has been What's the Story 227 with Aoife Moore. And until next week.
K-Royce.
Bull Hearts.
Can't lose. Too sweet.